I still remember the way they looked me in the eye and said, "You're imagining things." But I wasn't. I knew. Deep down, I knew. Every instinct in me screamed that something was wrong, but I couldn't prove it, at least not at first. At the time, I never thought I'd be in this kind of situation. I'd always believed in trust, in love, in the idea that the people you care about wouldn't hurt you in the most unforgivable way. But the truth is, life has a funny way of shattering even the strongest beliefs. It didn't happen all at once, and that's what made it worse. It wasn't some obvious betrayal that slapped me in the face. No, it was a slow, painful unraveling. It started with little things, a text message that lingered a bit too long on the screen, a glance exchanged a bit too hurriedly. I convinced myself I was overthinking, but the doubts kept creeping in, becoming harder to ignore. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, something I wasn't being told. And then came the moment when I finally confronted them. I had gathered every tiny shred of evidence, every suspicion. And yet, when I asked, they denied it all. With a straight face, they told me I was imagining things. And I wanted to believe them. I really did, but I couldn't. I knew the truth, even if they didn't want to admit it. This is the story of how I found the truth, even when everyone around me tried to convince me I was wrong. When I first met Jordan, everything felt like it was falling into place. We'd met through mutual friends at a party, and it was one of those instant connections where everything just clicked. The conversation flowed effortlessly, and before long, I found myself laughing more than I had in ages. He had this way about him, charming, thoughtful, and easy to talk to. It didn't take long for us to exchange numbers, and soon we were texting nonstop. It felt so natural, so right. I never expected to fall for someone so quickly, but I did. From the beginning, he was different. I remember the way he'd listen, really listen, when I talked about my day, my dreams, or the smallest details of my life. He remembered the little things, like how I preferred my coffee or that I hated having the radio on in the morning. He'd show up with my favorite snack, just because. And those moments, those thoughtful gestures, made everything feel effortless. We spent a lot of time together. Weekends were filled with late-night walks, spontaneous trips, and long conversations that stretched into the early hours of the morning. It was like we had this bubble around us, just the two of us against the world. I felt seen, appreciated, and cherished. It was everything I'd ever wanted in a relationship, and I couldn't help but think that maybe this was the one. But things began to change slowly, like the turning of a page in a book you're not ready to read. At first, I brushed it off. Work had been hectic for both of us, and the stresses of life sometimes made us less available. I noticed Jordan's replies getting a little slower, his excuses a bit more vague. Sometimes he'd cancel plans at the last minute, claiming he was too tired or had to work late. It wasn't enough to raise alarms at first. It was just life, I told myself. We all go through phases where we get overwhelmed. I figured he was no different. There were the odd moments too, like when he'd be texting at odd hours, or when he'd leave the room to take a call, only to come back acting like nothing had happened. I told myself I was overthinking it. People get busy. They need space. It didn't help that Jordan was always so reassuring. Every time I brought up feeling disconnected, he'd hold me close, kiss my forehead, and promise that everything was fine. "You're just imagining things," he'd say with that smile of his, the one that always made my heart skip a beat. I wanted to believe him, so I did. And so the days passed. I told myself it was just a phase. Maybe he was dealing with something personal. I'd seen it happen with friends before. Relationships go through tough patches, and sometimes people get lost in their own struggles. We were both young, figuring things out. Maybe I was just being paranoid, I thought. He was still there, still showing up when it mattered most, and that was enough to push the worries to the back of my mind. But those small, nagging feelings didn't go away. The inconsistencies started to pile up, an odd shift in his routine, a sudden need for space, an unexplained detour in the middle of the day. Still, I brushed them off. I convinced myself it was just stress or work. Jordan would tell me everything was fine, and I wanted to believe it. I needed to believe it. The thought that something was wrong, something that I couldn't fix, was too terrifying to entertain. So I didn't. Not yet. But somewhere deep inside, I knew. I knew something was off. I just didn't know what. The unease didn't hit all at once. It crept in, little by little, like a shadow you can't quite place. At first, I thought it was just a passing phase, something in the air that would clear up soon enough. But then, there were moments that felt off. Tiny things, really, things that most people would probably miss. But for me, they were like little breadcrumbs, leading me toward a truth I wasn't ready to face. It started with the phone. Jordan had always been protective of his privacy, nothing weird about that. But suddenly, he started turning the screen away from me when we were together, or he'd leave the room to take a call, always with an excuse. It's work, he'd say, but I noticed that his tone always changed when the phone rang. He'd answer it quickly, sometimes even rush out of the room like he had to get away from me. The thing is, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to think. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but my gut kept nagging at me, telling me something wasn't right. I tried to ignore it, but the feeling only grew stronger as the weeks went by. It wasn't just the phone, it was the little things that didn't make sense. Sometimes, when we were together, he'd seem distant, like his mind was somewhere else. His responses were shorter, more distracted, and I'd find myself asking, "Are you okay?" only to be met with a quick, "Yeah, just tired." There was this one time we were out to dinner, sitting across from each other, and I swear I saw him glance at his phone 3 times in the span of 5 minutes. He smiled, tried to play it off like nothing was happening, but it stuck with me. I don't know why. It was just a glance, but for some reason, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something. I started second-guessing myself. Maybe I was just being paranoid. I mean, I had no concrete reason to feel this way, right? Maybe I was just insecure or needy, or maybe I was overthinking it all. I tried to tell myself that, tried to push the thoughts away, but they lingered. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, constantly wondering if I was imagining things or if there really was something wrong. It was exhausting. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to ask him, "Why have you been acting so distant lately?" I remember saying it softly, trying to mask the frustration and hurt I was feeling. Jordan's reaction was always the same, a shrug, a smile, a quick change of subject. "You're imagining things," he'd say with a slight laugh. "I'm just tired, that's all. Why don't you trust me?" His words should have reassured me, but they didn't. Instead, they made me feel guilty, like I was the one in the wrong for even questioning him. "You're paranoid," he'd say, as if I was the one making up problems. I hated that feeling. I hated the way he could make me feel like I was crazy for trusting my own instincts. It got to a point where I started to wonder if I was losing my mind. I started questioning every little thing I did, every word I said. Was I too much? Was I being too demanding? Was my anxiety messing with my perception of reality? I didn't know anymore. I remember one night, after a particularly cold conversation, I sat in my car for hours, staring out at the street, wondering what was wrong with me. My heart ached, and my thoughts raced in circles. How could I trust my instincts when he made me feel like they were nothing more than baseless fears? Maybe I was just trying to create problems where there were none. Maybe it was me. But deep down, I couldn't shake the truth. Something was wrong, and no matter how much I tried to tell myself it wasn't, my gut wouldn't let me forget it. It was like a constant weight on my chest, growing heavier with each passing day. The more I tried to ignore it, the more the doubt gnawed at me. I felt like I was being torn apart by my own thoughts. Every time I asked, every time I brought it up, he'd deny it. He'd brush it off like it was nothing. And every time, I felt smaller, weaker, like I was the one at fault for doubting him. But the feeling didn't go away. It couldn't. I wanted to believe in us. I wanted to believe he was the person I thought he was. But the more I pushed the feeling down, the stronger it grew. My heart was telling me something my head couldn't comprehend, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. Despite everything, I couldn't shake the truth that lingered in the back of my mind. I knew something was happening, something I couldn't explain. And the more I tried to deny it, the more I knew I was right. It was a quiet afternoon when it happened. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, when Jordan's phone buzzed on the coffee table. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the name on the screen caught my attention. It wasn't a name I recognized, and the message that popped up was casual, almost too casual. "Hey, are you free later? I miss you." My heart stopped for a moment, and I immediately felt a wave of nausea rise in my stomach. I didn't pick up his phone. I didn't touch it, but I couldn't shake the words I'd just seen hanging in the air like a weight I couldn't ignore. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe it was a work friend. Maybe it was someone from the past. I didn't know, and I shouldn't assume the worst. But my mind wouldn't let it go. What kind of message was that? Who texts someone, "I miss you," if they're just a friend? That night, I couldn't shake the feeling. I waited until Jordan went to the bathroom, and then I grabbed his phone. I told myself I was only going to check to ease my mind. Just one quick look. I opened the messages, and there it was again. A string of conversations with this same person, full of inside jokes and familiar language. They'd been talking for weeks, sending messages back and forth that ranged from casual chit-chat to flirtatious banter. My hands were shaking as I scrolled, my mind racing. Who was this person? Why hadn't he ever mentioned them? And why was it so intimate? My stomach churned as the truth began to hit me like a ton of bricks. When Jordan came back into the room, I confronted him. My voice was shaking, my heart pounding in my chest. I held out the phone, showing him the messages. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked at the phone for a moment, then back at me, his face suddenly tense. "It's nothing," he said quickly, his tone defensive. "It's just a friend from work. You're making a big deal out of nothing." I felt a coldness settle over me, but I pressed further. "A friend? You've never mentioned them before, and this doesn't seem like just a friend." He was visibly irritated now, his expression hardening. "You're paranoid, you know that," he snapped. "You're overreacting, as usual. Why don't you trust me?" My heart dropped. His response was so automatic, so rehearsed. I could tell he'd said these words before. His voice was calm, almost too calm, like he was trying to talk me down from something I wasn't supposed to understand. But my gut was screaming at me. "I'm not crazy," I whispered, more to myself than to him. But I could already hear the doubt creeping into my voice. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe he wasn't hiding something. But the proof was right in front of me. Jordan let out a sigh, running his hands through his hair. "God, you're being ridiculous. I'm not cheating on you, okay? Stop being so insecure. It's embarrassing." I wanted to shout, to scream that I wasn't being paranoid, that I wasn't crazy. But instead, I just stood there, holding the phone in my hands, feeling like I was losing control of everything. The more I tried to explain what I saw, the more he pushed back, accusing me of being jealous, irrational, unreasonable. And in that moment, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that I was just overthinking things, that I was imagining all of this. Maybe I was just being dramatic, maybe I was misreading the situation. But deep down, I knew the truth. I could feel it in my bones. I put the phone down slowly, my mind spinning. "I'm not crazy," I repeated, more to myself than anyone else. But Jordan wasn't listening, and that's when I realized he wasn't going to admit it. No matter what I saw, no matter how much evidence was right in front of us, he wasn't going to tell me the truth. And that hurt more than anything else. I couldn't let it go. No matter how much I tried to push it down, the nagging doubt wouldn't leave me. I couldn't trust my own thoughts anymore, not when Jordan was so good at convincing me I was imagining things. But something inside me refused to give up. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I had to know the truth, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. So I started quietly investigating. At first, it was small things, checking his phone when he wasn't looking or glancing over his shoulder at texts that flashed across the screen. I told myself it was just for peace of mind, that I was just making sure I wasn't being irrational. But every time I did, I found more signs, little inconsistencies. A text message that seemed more than friendly, a missed call from a number I didn't recognize, even his location on social media, which always seemed to be just around the corner when I knew he was supposed to be somewhere else. I started asking around, trying to keep it subtle. Mutual friends, acquaintances, anyone who might have seen or heard something. Most of them played it off like it was nothing, but there was one friend, Sarah, who almost let something slip. We were talking casually about Jordan when she mentioned, almost in passing, "Yeah, I saw Jordan with, well, you know, her last week at the coffee shop." I thought he was working, but her voice trailed off when she realized what she'd said. I froze, my heart pounding. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Sarah quickly backpedaled. "Oh, I didn't mean it like that. I'm sure it's nothing. He probably ran into her by accident." But I could hear the hesitation in her voice, the way she seemed to regret mentioning it at all. I didn't press her any further, but that was all I needed. A seed of doubt had been planted, and it started to grow. I couldn't stop thinking about what Sarah had said. Who was this woman? Why was Jordan meeting her when he should have been at work? It wasn't the first time I'd heard strange things like this, but now it felt like the pieces were starting to fall into place. Then one afternoon, it happened. I was at the grocery store when I spotted him across the aisle. Jordan, laughing, standing far too close to a woman I didn't recognize. She was wearing a bright red scarf, her hair pulled back in a way that looked too deliberate. They were talking, whispering almost, and their body language was unmistakable. The way they leaned toward each other, the way he touched her arm when he laughed. It wasn't innocent. It wasn't casual. It was the kind of thing that stung, like a slap in the face. I couldn't breathe. My legs felt weak, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. They didn't see me, but I saw enough. I saw the way Jordan's eyes lit up when he looked at her, the way he smiled, his whole demeanor shifting in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. I wanted to confront him right then and there, but I didn't. I turned and walked out of the store, my mind racing. My heart was in my throat. Every part of me wanted to scream at him, to demand answers, but I couldn't. Not yet. The truth was beginning to crack through, slipping in between the cracks of his lies. There were more and more little things that didn't add up. More subtle hints that told me what I didn't want to know. I didn't have concrete proof yet, but the pieces were all there, pieces I couldn't ignore anymore. And for the first time, the doubt that had plagued me for so long shifted into certainty. I knew. Deep down, I knew. The day I decided to confront him, I knew it couldn't wait any longer. The weight in my chest had grown unbearable, and I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. I had all the pieces now, the clues, the inconsistencies, the moments I couldn't ignore. I had seen enough, and I knew the truth, whether I wanted to or not. I waited until that evening after dinner, when the apartment was quiet and everything felt like it was teetering on the edge. My heart was racing, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had to be strong, clear-headed. There was no more room for doubt. "Jordan," I began, my voice steady but thick with emotion. "We need to talk." He didn't look up from his phone at first, but he could sense something was off. "What's wrong?" His voice was casual, like he didn't already know. I took a deep breath. "I know what's been going on." The words felt heavy in my mouth, but they came out without hesitation. "I know about her. I know about the messages, the phone calls, the times you've been somewhere you shouldn't have been. I know you've been lying to me." He dropped the phone, his eyes widening. His face shifted from confusion to panic, and I saw something in his eyes that I hadn't seen before, guilt, maybe, or fear. But the panic was quickly masked by anger. "Where is this coming from?" he snapped, his voice rising. "You're just..." "What?" Making things up again? You've got no proof. You're just being paranoid, like always. His eyes darted away from me, avoiding my gaze. I can't believe you're doing this again. I stood my ground, my heart aching but my voice unwavering. I have all the proof I need. I saw the messages, Jordan. I saw the way you were with her. And Sarah, she told me everything. I know what's been happening. His face twisted in disbelief. Sarah? You and a Sarah. He scoffed. She doesn't know anything. She's just trying to cause trouble. You're acting crazy. I shook my head slowly, feeling a lump rise in my throat. No, Jordan. I'm not crazy. I saw it with my own eyes. I'm not imagining things. His expression faltered for just a second, just long enough for me to see that he knew. But then it was gone, replaced by defensiveness and frustration. You're being dramatic. Nothing's going on. You're overthinking this. I swear, nothing happened between me and her. My heart broke all over again, not just because of the betrayal, but because of the way he was still denying it. The truth was right there, plain as day, and yet he still tried to twist it, still tried to make me feel like I was the one in the wrong. I saw you with her, Jordan. In the store. I saw the way you looked at her. My voice cracked, but I fought back the tears. You're not fooling me anymore. For a moment, he was silent. He rubbed his face, a strange vulnerability in his eyes, and I thought, for a second, that maybe, just maybe, he would admit it. But instead, he sighed and shook his head. I'm not doing this with you. You don't trust me, and that's your problem. I've tried everything, but it's never enough. Maybe you're right, maybe I am messing up, but it's not like you think. His words felt like a punch in the gut. It's not like I think? I whispered, the disbelief coating my voice. What is it like then? What is it? He didn't answer. He couldn't. I stared at him for a long moment, the realization settling in. No matter what I said, no matter how much I showed him, he wasn't going to admit it. He wasn't going to validate my truth. And in that moment, I knew that was the hardest part. It wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't the lies. It was the way he wouldn't even acknowledge my pain, my truth. The way he still tried to make me feel like I was wrong. I stood there, silent, my heart breaking for a second time. I'm done, Jordan, I said quietly, my voice steady but full of hurt. I'm done. And as I turned to leave, I could hear him calling after me, his voice full of desperation, but it didn't matter anymore. The truth had already slipped through the cracks, and there was no going back. The days that followed felt like a blur. I moved through them mechanically, barely aware of what was happening around me. I left the apartment, packed my things in the middle of the night, not even giving Jordan a chance to protest. I couldn't bear to be in the same place any longer, surrounded by the memories of lies, the echoes of what I thought we had. For a while, I couldn't trust myself. I questioned every decision I made, wondering if I had misread the signs, if I was overreacting, if maybe I was the one who was wrong. It was a struggle, waking up each day, trying to piece myself back together. My mind kept circling back to those moments, those doubts, wondering if I had done enough, if I had confronted him too late, if I had given him too many chances to prove himself. But as the days turned into weeks, I started to see things more clearly. I realized that the real damage wasn't just the betrayal, it was the gaslighting. It was the constant manipulation, the way I'd been made to feel like I was the one who couldn't trust my own instincts. Jordan had twisted everything so many times that, for a while, I doubted my own reality. But I didn't need him to validate me anymore. The truth was already in my heart, already in my gut. I had trusted my instincts when everything else around me was clouded in doubt, and in the end, that was what saved me. I started to heal slowly. The pain didn't disappear overnight, but with each passing day, I grew stronger. I found solace in the quiet moments, the small victories. I began to rebuild my sense of self, to reclaim the parts of me I had lost in the chaos of that relationship. And as I looked back, I realized something important. Sometimes you won't get closure. Sometimes the truth is something only you will know. But knowing is enough. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need him to admit to the hurt he'd caused. I had the truth, and that was enough. In the end, it wasn't about the relationship or what we had. It was about finding my own strength again. I was proud of myself for trusting my gut, for refusing to accept the lies, even when they felt so convincing. I'd been hurt, yes, but I had also learned that I was capable of trusting myself, of standing up for myself, and of walking away from something that no longer served me. And that was the real victory. They denied it, over and over again. Every time I confronted him, he told me I was imagining things, that I was paranoid, that I was wrong. But I knew the truth. Deep down, I always knew. And in the end, that was all I needed. The pain of betrayal still lingers, like a scar that reminds me of what I went through. But I've learned to live with it, to accept it as part of my story. It doesn't define me, it's just a chapter, a difficult chapter, but one I can close. Now, I'm focusing on healing. It's not an easy road, but it's one I'm walking with my head held high. I'm finding peace in the silence, in the space I've created for myself. It's a strange kind of freedom, knowing that I don't need anyone else's validation to feel whole. I don't need him to admit what happened. I don't need closure from him. I have the truth, and that truth is mine to carry. I've learned that sometimes you have to trust yourself when everything else around you is telling you otherwise. You have to believe that you deserve better, even when the person you love is trying to convince you that you don't. And when you walk away, you'll find that there's so much more waiting for you. More strength, more clarity, and a better future. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that I'm stronger now. And that's all that matters.